original investigators believe he murdered her. They just can't prove it.
It's my first initial call to the private investigator working on my dad's case.
My wife jumps up from the table and says, "Oh my God, who is this man coming in the backyard?"
I divorced him because I couldn't trust him at all. He lied to me at the very beginning. He was living 2 separate lives.
In the water about 30, 50 yards away, and identified it as it was a person.
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
Hi Andrew, my name is Ash and I'm doing a documentary series on Carolyn Blankenfeld, who had drowned in the bay there, and you had found the boat with 3 dogs on it that had floated up to the shore there, and I was hoping if I could chat with you about it. So if you don't mind giving me a call back, I would be grateful. Thank you.
I'm Carolyn's twin and brother. We grew up together in Manchester, New Hampshire. We went to the same school. I can remember my mom telling me coming home that my mom separated Carolyn and I when we were in early grade school. Mostly my mom said because I was too dependent on my sister and I wasn't paying attention enough. So I came home crying every day for 1 week because I wasn't with my sister. And that over time, you know, it got better. I have very fond memories of us growing up. We would walk to school holding hands and I'd pick flowers together with her. She was my protector. How could I say it? I was a very passive child. Carolyn was a child that would kind of stand up for herself and stand up for other people. And she protected me in school. If someone was bullying me, she would go up to him and basically tell him to stop doing it. So Carolyn she was my protector, she was my sister. She was a strong twin between the two of us. I always felt safe around her because I always felt that she would always, you know, look after me and cover my back, you know. And anybody that messed with me in school, she would go up to him. She was never afraid to go up to somebody and just tell them to knock it off. And that was her character throughout her life. She was a very strong woman and she said what was on her mind. Not in a rude way, I think in a very direct way. I think she was very intelligent. She never went to college, but she was also extremely smart. She was very naturally gifted and a very smart person. But if she saw something and was determined, she wouldn't let it go. She would pursue it. She would be a good detective because she would dig up things. If I wanted to find out something, she would find out what it was and make sure that she reviewed everything. She was very detail-oriented, very meticulous about certain things. She did things a little bit more risky than I would have done, but she lived her life full, and she didn't have any regrets what she was doing. You know, she rode motorcycles. I watched her ride the biggest Harley motorcycle, the big one. She had a Road King, then I think she had a Street Glide, and then she rode the top of the line one, and I couldn't believe how she rode it. She was only 5'1". And she rode that thing. She did, you know, figure eights and stuff. I watched her at a Harley dealership she used to work at, and I watched her ride one day, and she just could ride bikes. And she would ride in all kinds of weather, and high winds, and she was tough. She could swim. I don't think she was a strong swimmer. I think she learned how to swim. She could swim. I know she didn't like deep water. I've gone boating with her and she always used to swim in the more shallow areas. And it was always very careful. When she would get off a boat, she would always get off by the ladder. She never jumped off boats and she never jumped off objects, any type of moving object that I could see. I know she did jet skis and she would do hit waves and go high in the air and come down. I like doing that too. There's some risk with that, of course. But anytime I was with her, and I've been on her boat with her, she was always very safety conscious, and she never swam in deep water. We kayaked across where she lived, across the inlet in Pensacola, Alabama, which is 2 miles across. Her and I did it twice. And we knew the middle of the inlet was always the most turbulent waters. And we talked about that one time, and she was not comfortable with being in deep water. And I said, gee, what happens if one of us happens? If we roll over on the kayak? She goes, well, we would be okay, but I wouldn't want to be in the middle of the inlet swimming. So I knew that that's something she didn't enjoy doing. She enjoyed doing things as far as water in a safe way, you could say. But I've never seen her dive off, maybe a dock. She maybe jumped off a low-level dock into the water. We all have done that. But I've never seen her jump off a boat, ever. I've been with her a lot, and I've been on boats with her. Not all the time, but the times I've been on her, she's never done that. She's never done that.
Hi, Charles.
Hi, Ash. So, yeah, I was on the other line when you called.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Did you listen to the voicemail?
Yes, I did.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so basically I'm doing a documentary on what happened to Carolyn on the water that day. And we're just trying to get interviews with all the people who have a piece of the puzzle there. I know yours is rather small because it was just finding the boat, but we do like to talk to everybody. So I was just wondering if that's something you're interested in or talking to us about.
Sure.
Okay, perfect. So we can do a phone interview, which is great, but we do like to do in-person, on-camera interviews, and we actually will be out there next week, and I was wondering if I might be able to set up an on-camera interview with you.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and we're not asking you anything but the purview of what you know, which is where the boat was, what state you found it in, those kind of questions.
Sure.
Okay, perfect. Ooh, there we go. This is a cool place.
Yeah.
So thanks for sitting down with us today. So basically, I guess I just wanted to really talk to you about the day that you guys discovered the boat. So we're talking about May 6, 2018. Had you heard anything before the boat came, right? Because nothing had really gotten to...
Oh, absolutely not.
No.
Yeah.
We were just at my house and we noticed a boat out there, and when you're on the water, you're looking out there all the time. You see boats go by, but this one was just floating and towards the land, and we didn't see any activity on it.
Right. Andy noticed it, and we walked from his house down this way as it was floating toward land on this side.
Yeah, our concern was it hitting a dock, because it looked like it was free floating. There was not dragging anchor, anything, but then we noticed these little dogs running around. But anyhow, we went to rescue it because it was going to hit the dock out here.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So we basically walked out there in the water and got to it, and then talked about, hey, there's dogs on here, and there's pretty good northeast wind. We knew exactly where the boat had come from. I mean, you could have went back and took it right back to the area that it came from, because we know where the wind was coming from, but that's beside the point. The dogs are on there, so we couldn't really push it upwind and to my dock, so we decided to...
No, I just walked out there. It wasn't that deep. We've got a really shallow bay, so it was, 150 feet, 200 feet off
But
when
we
I got
did
to
start
it.
the motor and drove it to the
The
field.
gate was open, so I just pushed the gate. It was a pontoon boat, and I pushed the gate, and that's when I saw the 3 dogs, and I didn't wait to introduce. I just jumped up, and they backed off.
Yeah, they weren't aggressive, or
No,
they
luckily,
seemed fine.
yeah.
They really were calm.
Probably
No,
confused.
the keys were in it, and so I cranked the motor up to get it away from the docks that it was going to hit, and took it back out. And then I went over to Andy's dock, and we tied it up there.
So when you said you got to the boat, how high was the water to you when you got to the boat about, do you think?
Probably just over my waist.
You said the door on the pontoon was open?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so were the dogs actually running on the outside?
No, they were in. I didn't see the dogs until I got to it and saw something in there, and then I pushed
Yeah, they
the
weren't
door
doing
open.
much of anything.
Okay.
Couple sitting on the ground, maybe one was on a bench sitting there.
And I'm sorry, you said you pushed the door open.
Right.
Oh, it was closed.
Either
okay.
pulled, it was not locked. I didn't have to climb.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
On a pontoon boat, you got the little door to jump out. So that door was open and it was unlatched.
Oh, okay.
And that's how I got into it.
And then when you found the boat, the keys were in it, but it wasn't started at that. It wasn't running at all.
Right.
Okay. And so then you just pulled it up and tied it to the dock. And had you ever seen boats get loose like that before?
Other than a storm, no.
A storm, or if they were on the beach across, tide came up and they were left the boat unattended, it would have just washed straight like it did. Because there is a beach right where it came from that's pretty popular beach for people to sit and park there.
Yeah.
I don't think either one of us were like, oh my goodness, there's a boat with nobody in it. It was more like, some idiot lost his boat. Better go grab it, somebody's gonna be looking for it type thing. Nothing, alarming to me anyway.
Until we looked around.
So what did you guys find when you looked around?
Wallet, sunglasses, telephones.
Beach towels.
Just like
somebody had just jumped off of it.
fell off or something. Because everything was just sitting, just like somebody had just fell off. So that got us a little worried, and my wife called 911. We were possibly going to take it out there. I knew where to take it to if somebody had fell off of it, or if it left the beach. I knew exactly where to take it so they could got the boat back. But then I said, no, this looks kind of scary. I'm just going to make a phone call and let authorities take care of it,
Do you know around what time you first saw the boat?
It was a couple hours before dark.
Yeah, and then we found out that the guy who eventually swam all the way to shore over here arrived like 7-something, 7:30.
Yeah.
So he had 2.5, 3 hours to be in that water. Figured he was exhausted. If he swam, that's a pretty good distance, 2.5 miles, to swim. With a wind to you can only really swim one direction when you have a wind like we had, So he actually swam right downwind, and he ended up, to the east of us.
And after you guys called the cops, what happened after that?
We safed the boat up, put some bumpers in there, and made sure it was tied up good because it was kind of banging on the pier, So we just safed it up and waited for people to come, and they
I wasn't really involved with that. I came back over here because it was just somebody's boat. I wasn't.
Yeah,
wasn't
really
concerned.
too worried. You're not thinking anything crazy.
I think FWC came first, and the guy made some phone calls, and he was worried. Then the regular sheriff's local came down here, about 2 of them, and they said, hey, this is an investigation now. Nobody else goes on the boat. Y'all don't, did y'all move anything? I said, no, we just looked at where things were laying and put them right back where they were, the wallet. And
yeah.
we looked up who the guy was, I think, and
yeah, his ID and her ID, they were both there on the boat.
in the wallet,
Do you remember what kind of clothes that you saw on the boat?
Maybe a pullover like a woman would wear,
Beach towel.
Towels, yeah, everything was odd.
Don't really call them anything out of the ordinary that wouldn't be in a boat.
It was a short afternoon trip they were doing,
How long would you say after you called the cops approximately did it take them to get here?
So I'd say 20 to 40 minutes.
Did you stay with the Fish and Wildlife after they got there, or did you just kind of let them?
We stayed there, and I talked to him about my thoughts of where the boat came from, because I know which way the wind was going exactly, but he called in some reinforcements to search the bay, and everybody was way to the west with the helicopter and the other boat that came looking for them. They never really came over here where I had told them, I think because they were from Alabama.
Oh, okay.
I'm not really sure, but I wasn't satisfied with the search, and I made it known that I didn't think they were looking in the right place, but he said, hey, we're going to look over here, to the east. I mean, west, really where they look real well.
Yeah.
She was a very caring mom. She took care of her kids well. She was very responsible. She was strict with them. She told me one time, if your kids hate you, then at times then you're doing your job. She goes, I'm not here to be their friend. I'm here to be their parent. And she's right. She's right. She was a good mom. She was a great mom. She was a very cool mom. Her kids' friends really thought she was cool because she was very, very progressive, very modern in her thinking. And I think the kids really liked that, and I think their friends liked it too. They thought she was a pretty cool lady. You know, when they bought their house in Lillian, I stayed in that house when it was, I think I remember in the guest room, I bought the bed and I actually slept in that house a few weekends, you know, until they officially moved in there. And it was a beautiful area. You know, they had the inlet there, and it was really a beautiful house, and it was right close to the water, and it was a nice neighborhood. People were very friendly. It was a small community. You could enjoy the inlet and watch the sunsets, see the dolphins come in right in the early evening. They're hunting for fish. It was really cool. There's a lot of interesting wildlife there. It was great for their dogs. They can take them down the beach. I always enjoyed going there. I always enjoyed visiting her there. It was always relaxing and pleasant and a lot of fun. And we had a little fire in the backyard late at night, and we'd drink a little bit. And then friends from the neighborhood would come over. Her friend Buddy would come over, and we had good times. We had really, really good times. I have very good memories of that.
Google that and see how far that is from here to here. That's a pretty good swim. We don't know where he was out here.
Yeah.
Swimming,
Yeah,
where
exactly.
she went off and he supposedly jumped in to find her. Without throwing the anchor out, with the wind blowing, that boat's gonna go away pretty quick. Well, I heard that she jumped in, didn't come up. He went in looking for her down in the water, and then he came up and the boat was
on its
gone.
way. Yeah.
Yep.
And who did you hear that from? Just kind of rumor mill or?
Yeah, rumor mill from afterwards when it was that was his story. Yeah, I had heard from maybe FWC when they came out the next day looking for,
Absolutely.
searching for the body, and it ended up to the west of us.
So after the cops came and dealt with the boat, did they just leave the boat there, or how did
They got the guy's son to come, the owner's son, to come get the dogs. He was upset, I guess. I don't know if it's his mother-in-law or if it's his mother.
That was his mom. Yeah, that was his blood mom. Yeah.
Yeah, it was not a happy time. We, I think that came on in.
Yeah,
Nothing we could do.
Was the boat still here when Chris came out of the water, or you don't know? Because
It stayed overnight.
oh, it stayed overnight. Did they come and haul it out?
I went
the
to
next-
work the next day and somebody came and got it in
Got
the
it.
morning.
Oh, okay.
Drove it off.
Carolyn would say some things, tell me Chris was impatient sometimes, and they would get into arguments now and then. I know they had some marital problems. When I lived down there was some marital issues going on. I know that Chris and Carolyn separated very briefly. At least that's what Chris told me, and Carolyn didn't say a lot to me about it. She said that they were basically getting their own space. What I heard is there was another person in the relationship involved on her end, but I could never corroborate that, and I didn't want to really pry into their business too much. I guess they were trying to work it out, and I think eventually they did. I don't know any of the more details regarding that, but I know that Chris told me he was writing a letter to Carolyn, that how much he wanted to be with her and how much he cared about her, that she was everything in his life, and that was back then, and that they could work that out. So I guess they did work that out. I know that Chris used to travel, and I know that she missed him, but she was also used to being independent and alone, having a prior marriage, with someone in the military. But she was comfortable doing that, and he would travel with one of the companies, and I think he would travel sometimes a couple of weeks at a time. He was, for the most part, pretty patient with her. I think they had disagreements a lot of times. Carolyn had a very strong personality, and she wanted things done a certain way. And I think he wanted done a certain way, but I think he would give in more to Carolyn's ideas and stuff. At least that's what I saw when I was there. So I think Carolyn was kind of the boss in the relationship. At least that's what I saw. She was frugal. She could sell. She could talk somebody into buying something. I know she would. And you know what? She was an attractive woman, and so that always didn't hurt in sales. She did things that only men would do, and particularly in the South, how women are perceived in the South. It's a little bit different. It's changed a lot, of course, but in some areas, there's a certain role that women play, and there's other roles that women don't play, and it's an old school mentality in some parts. It made her even more wanting to do it, you know? She was a maverick.
Did you have an impression of how the water was that day? Did you feel like it was more choppy than normal, or seemed pretty calm, or?
It wasn't anything abnormal. When we have a wind, it's a little bit of chop, you know? He should have, before he dove off, is pitched the anchor in the water. And the guy he'd been in the boating before. He was very experienced, I hear.
Do you guys boat at all?
I bought a boat Saturday.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
What kind of boat?
Yamaha,
Okay.
little 19-foot bay boat. So.
Oh, nice. How about you? Do you boat?
My neighbor has a pontoon boat, and we share it. We keep it at my pier because she doesn't have anyone to keep it, so it's pretty convenient.
Have you ever been out on this part of the bay where you've ever become like nervous about how the?
I mean, this bay is only 12, 15 feet deep on average, so I mean, there's only so big of a wave that can develop. I mean, you can get blown around and get scared if you've got a small enough boat, but that pontoon boat would have to be in one heck of a straight line wind to really...
I'd knock somebody off.
Yeah,
it wouldn't happen. It really wouldn't.
You're not going to fall off of it. No.
Yeah.
Even if you're just sitting there and it's rocking, you're not going to get knocked off.
It's not ever like that.
Now in the Gulf where it's, you know, hundreds of feet deep, it's completely different, but this is a shallow bay and it just can't do the same things that it does out there.
Did you guys ever, in your experience, and this is just to what you've experienced, did you ever see people out just swimming in the middle of the bay, or was they always doing a sport like windsurfing?
No, they always have a boat with them. And now somebody it's 1,000 feet to get where you're over your head walking out here.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long way. So you can be out there right now and it'd be up to a little above your knees.
Yeah.
At the end of my dock right now, it'd be about your knees.
Yeah.
It's shallow. Then it goes up to a little bit, then 700 feet, it might be up to your waist. So right at 1,000 feet, it drops down where it'd be over your head. So we have seen people swimming along the shallow water out there towards the west just for exercise.
But never anyone like straight through the middle in things you've seen?
It's 4 miles straight across there, isn't it?
Maybe a deer.
That's a long way to swim.
Yeah.
Seen a deer go across,
Really?
yeah.
That's crazy. He's like trying to get to the grass on the other side.
No, he's looking for Florida. He's leaving Alabama.
He's done with Alabama. It's deer flight going on here. Have you ever heard of anyone drowning in the bay? Is that a common thing that happens, or you haven't really?
Not at all.
Not in this bay, no.
Yeah. So you said you do see people swim, but they're swimming kind of close. They're swimming kind of more along the shore, but out a little ways.
Yes, out near the edge where it drops off. It's almost a straight line.
Yeah.
It really is. It goes a pretty good ways and it just drops, but it's not more than 8 to 10 feet out there. Deepest part, like 13 to 16, there's a channel way over on the Alabama side of the bay. Other than that, it's shallow.
Have you ever anchored the pontoon like on the beach that we were looking at there? And then is it like usually crowded in May, or?
No, I wouldn't say it's crowded. The very tip of that peninsula that went out, there's a point. That gets quite a few people on it. Lots of room for boats on both sides of the sandbar.
Oh,
and they'll spend the day, they'll cook out and spend a lot of time.
And would you say on a nice summer day, on a weekend or something, that there's, how would you say there's like 10 boats out there, or
No,
like
I'd
20
say
or 50?
4 to 8, no.
Oh, okay, so it's always kind of, from your experience, it's always been kind of
that's
just
what's
a couple
decent.
boats.
It's not real crowded.
Have you ever gone out there where it's just you anchored out there? Okay, so there are times where it's even kind of private.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Nice.
I know that he worked for 2 companies. He worked for Envirocon. Then he got a job at Austal. He left that and he went to Austal Corporation, which is in Mobile. And that's where they build aluminum ships. They do the trimaran. That's a government contract. I guess they do the littoral combat ships. They got the contract from the military. He seemed to enjoy it. He told me that he saved the company quite a bit of money, made some changes within the company itself, and that he got along very well with the president of the company, and that he was that safety officer. of that facility. And he would go out on sea trials, so he knew a lot about boats. He was also Coast Guard. He told me he was part of search and rescue. He would do drug interdiction on the seas, he told me, and he was part of a strike force or something. A land strike force. That's what he told me. He said he was part of that, and that he would do search and rescue, drug interdiction. He'd find bodies in the ocean and they would retrieve them. And he told me about different things that he encountered on the ocean. The job was risky, and they would, get on boats and raid boats, follow drug dealers that may be smuggling. This is what he told me. And, it sounded, I took him at his word that this is what he did. He was a pretty strong guy. I know that he had a lot of experience regarding ocean. I mean, those guys are trained pretty well, and they're trained to react in a certain way. And also being on boats and being a safety officer and doing boat trials, you really have to know boat safety pretty well. I mean, he's an expert. He should be an expert at it.
Did you ever get the impression that he was lying to you about anything?
Yes. He when I talked with him, he told me that when he washed up on shore, that he had water in his lungs and that they put a breathing tube in him. It's what we call intubation. I do that every day at work, being an anesthetist. I know what it is, and I know it quite well. What I did find out later on is that he wasn't intubated, and that he got discharged from the hospital a day later, which kind of surprised me, because I know when people get intubated, you can get the tube out, a breathing tube out, within a relatively certain period of time. It depends on the damage to the lungs. Now, I know, being in my profession, if you ingested seawater in your lungs, that's pretty damaging to your lungs. It depends on the extent of the damage. It also depends on how much you entered your lungs. And that would be proven through chest x-ray. And if he's intubated, they probably wouldn't have extubated him, meaning taking the tube out, that quickly if he had that amount of water in his lungs. He also told me that he was on CPAP at home because he wasn't breathing well afterwards. I was told that he did not have CPAP, and I was also told, based on the report that I read, is that he was not intubated. So why he would tell me those things, I don't know. This is what he told me on the phone, that he washed up, he was intubated, he had water in his lungs, and that he still had problems breathing, and that he was on CPAP at home. Now, in my profession, anesthesia, we use CPAP a lot of times for sleep apnea because it's positive pressure. And you can also use it for people with other lung issues. But what I was told is that none of that happened. So why he would tell me that, I don't know. That kind of puzzled me quite a bit, actually. When he talked to me on the phone, I remember having a conversation with him. It might have been either in the hospital or after the hospital. He didn't sound short of breath to me whatsoever on the phone. His voice sounded quite normal, and he sounded like that he was breathing perfectly fine. I know how people breathe because that's my job, being in the profession I am. If people are in distress or not in distress, and if they've had recent lung injury, and particularly if they've had water in their lungs, their breathing is going to be a little bit labored. It's going to be a little bit hard. When you're talking, you're going to get a little bit of shortness of breath. At least that's what from my training and what I've seen in my profession, that's typically what you see. I didn't really detect that talking with him on the phone, that he was in any respiratory distress. Chris knew how to drive a boat. He was actually very good at driving boats, even unloading the boat into the water. He knew how to reverse, bring the boat down into the ramp, get it in the water. He knew how to unhitch it. He knew how to tie it down. He knew all the safety protocols on the boat. He let me drive the boat one time, which was a lot of fun. That's when they didn't have the pontoon. They had a boat prior to that. He let me drive it. He knew about nautical miles. He would talk to me in Coast Guard knowledge, of nautical miles, and he always would talk in a very manner that he knew exactly what was going on. He knew a lot about boat engines. He knew about everything. He was talking everything to me about the boat. And it's like he had a lot of knowledge about boating, about direction, about reading maps. He knew a lot about safety. He would tell me a lot of things about boat safety. He taught me about boat safety. So he had an extreme wealth of knowledge that he imparted to me about boat safety, what you should do or shouldn't do. his experience when he was in the Coast Guard. He referred to that, often enough. And so, I trusted him in his knowledge, and he came across to me as someone that knew exactly, feeling very comfortable on a boat, who knew how to steer a boat quite well. He would always follow boat rules. He would always drop the anchor. He would always put the ladder down. Carolyn would wait for him to put the ladder down. I remember we parked at a beach. I forgot what beach it was. We drove the boat up right onto the beach. He tied the boat down. I got out. I pulled the boat in with the rope. Carolyn got out on the ladder. She would wait for him to put the ladder down. She never jumped off the boat or into the water. She's never done that. She'd always wait. Always would wait. Yeah.